All right, hi everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast, where we talk all things Commander. This week, we're asking the question, is Commander ruining the color pie? And we're going to throw in some of our top color pie breaks as well. Joined with me is Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive. How are you doing, Seth?
I'm doing good, Richard. How are you today?
I'm doing well. And we have Phil, Brewer's Kitchen. How are you doing? We cannot hear you, Phil.
Yeah, I think Phil's muted or something.
I think I'm muted. Yeah, doing good. And yeah, I kind of muted myself before this for some reason.
And we have Krim, the Asian Avenger. How you doing?
Yo, I'm pretty great. I'm excited to talk some Commander.
All right. So before we get into the color pie, be sure to give us a like, a subscribe, a follow on whatever platform you're listening to us on. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. And also check out Richard's Garage, where you can buy MTG Goldfish merch. Go to mtggoldfishmerch.com, purchase stuff. I will pack it, and I will send it to you. So let us get into today's podcast. Seth, I think you posed this question, actually. Is Commander ruining the color pie? Now, the color pie, if you don't know what it is, so Wizards has allocated basically certain abilities or certain attributes to each color, and cards in those colors should do those things. So, for example, blue is supposed to be good at drawing cards, have flying creatures, counter spells, things like that. Green is supposed to have big, beefy creatures, not be able to counter spells. So over the 30 years of Magic the Gathering, the color pie has kind of shifted and moved around. And I guess the prompt for this is in 2023, everything needs ramp, everything needs card draw, and Wizards has been giving that to all colors. So normally in 1v1 Magic, when you're playing 60 card formats, if a color can't do something, that's fine. You add a different color to your deck, right? If you are playing mono white and you need the ability to counter spells, you add some blue to your deck and then you're good to go. In Commander, you don't have that luxury. If you're playing a mono white Commander, you're kind of just stuck as is. And I think more recently there was a big push for mono white card draw. Mono white could not draw cards, and if you played a mono white Commander, you were very sad and did desperate things to draw cards. There have been a lot of card draw cards added, so much that we are at this question now, is the color pie even a thing anymore, and does it exist? So, initial takes. What are your thoughts on the color pie and what Commander is doing to it?
I mean, I think Commander has definitely caused a lot of recent color pie breaks. Whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing, I guess, is another conversation, but I don't even know if there's any argument that it's not. Because of the color identity restrictions, we've seen so many cards recently that would traditionally just not be printed in their colors show up in their colors, ranging from like black killing enchantments, blue exiling artifacts, white drawing cards. Like, the list is super, super long, and the only thing that makes sense to me is that's for Commander purposes. Like, because it's just not necessary. As you mentioned, it's not necessary for 60 card formats because you can legally just splash another color. So I think that Commander has had a really huge impact on the color pie with a lot of color pie breaks. Some of them might actually be a good thing. I think, like, being a color pie break maybe is not always a negative in every situation, but I do think that Commander has been the reason for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? And the reason is what Richard stated. You need some answers in every deck. Like, it's kind of weird that Black can now have targeted enchantment removal even. But as long as it's not the best answer, like as long as White doesn't have the best counter, I kind of like these color pie breaks, if you want to call them that. Some of them are debatable in their own rights, but I actually think it's a good thing because it's already, you're kind of limiting yourself if you play monocolor in Commander, and it's good if they can have answers for everything at least. So I'm pro color pie break, I guess, as long as it's not too much. As long as, I don't know, green doesn't have the best burn spell or something, it's fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, it kind of already does, but yeah. Like, I think that the color pie break though is something that's good for. It sounds weird. But maybe I don't know. Okay, when you think of like Color Pie Break from a 60 card like perspective, it's kind of like not great, right? Because like Richard mentioned, you add the color in of the color that whatever you need. Counter spells, you add in the blue. But when it comes to Commander, I think it's needed. So unfortunately, maybe this Color Pie Break is good. It sounds weird saying that having played Magic for as long as I have, but like I think it's a net positive. I'm thinking it's a net positive so far. As weird as it sounds.
Isn't it good if some colors are bad at things, though? Like, do we really want every color to do everything? Like, I get it from the, like, oh, I'm a brand new Commander player, and I want to reanimate my Crawlworm, and someone played a Graveyard Hate spell, so Feed the Swarm's gotta be a thing. Boo-hoo-hoo, Marrow, give me Graveyard Hate removal. Like, I feel like that's what's happening, but is that actually positive for the game long-term, for every color to do everything? Like, isn't the whole heart of Magic the different strengths and weaknesses of colors? Isn't that what the game's like build around? Do we want to see that like diminished?
We do see a lot, like the significance of a certain color is definitely diminished each time, right? Like, so mono black, like as soon as like, well, I mean, we're already on our way there. Like example, Phil mentioned, like if green or when green gets better counter spells, at that point, right? Like what is blue? Right? And then what is red when, you start getting like burnt out by other colors. So it does diminish each color's significance, but I mean, at its core, I guess like if mono, like example, one of the cards, I don't know if just like cards that exist that allow like certain colors to break the color, like black being able to kill an enchantment, killing an enchantment, losing things like that, losing life along the way, that's kind of flavorful. So I guess if it's still within the realm of like what the color's doing, then I guess it's fine. As weird as that sounds, like it's not a full detachment from the color.
No. I think Feed the Swarm is like so Wizards has gotten around this by just loosely adding some restriction of the color to the effect. So black can't kill enchantments, but if you lose life, it's fine. Right? Like white can't draw cards, but if you give other people cards, it's fine, right? So I could just say green can't counter spells, but if I attach it to a 3-mana 8/8 body ETB, it's fine, right? That's a green thing, right? Or, red can't counter spells, but if I burn, 8 damage to your face first, then I can counter a spell mana value 8 or less or something, right? Like, you can always warp it so that the flavor is there, and that's what Wizards has done, right? Wizards has done that so much over the past 2 years, right? They just loosely add something to the color that exists, but I don't know, like if different colors could do different things, it would be fine if they were all balanced, right? Like white doesn't need to draw cards if it gets like card advantage elsewhere, and that's fine, right? But that's like very hard to actually balance, to make sure like the different abilities all kind of equal out. So the easiest thing is just to make all abilities in all colors, and that's kind of what Wizards has decided to do, which is okay. It kind of loses the charm. Like when I build a white deck, is it really a white deck? It's just a deck now, right? Like it used to be a lot stricter. There was always the question of the color purple, like the 6th color in Magic the Gathering. Like if we add it, what would it even do? How would it be unique? And I would say in 2023, it doesn't matter, right? It's just a different color with more cards, and then it will do everything. So it's fine. Like, add the 6th color now. Like, we no longer have a strong color pie. So, I don't know. I think the pie break is bad, but, like, what's Wizards going to do? If they need to print, like, 600,000 cards a year, like, what are they going to do, right? Like, they just have to do it.
Bad, right? I mean, what's the Feed the Swarm? It's sorcery speed, 2 mana, spot removal with downside. To be fair, it is probably the most boring one of the color pie breaks. Like there are some that fit the color identity a bit better than just losing life for black. But it's not like it's Swords to Plowshares or something for black for enchantments. Like it is. I would never play it in any green deck. And as long as it's not good and you have to kind of take a hit in power level just so you have this effect, I think
but
that's
it starts
fine.
Bad.
I mean,
it starts bad, but gets good over time.
Point, yeah.
And Feed the Swarm, if you look on EDH Rec, it is the most played black removal spell. As like the 3rd most played black card overall. It's not like it's like there's these weird old black artifact destruction spells that are like truly horrible, but they technically exist from like Legends era. Those ones are so bad that even though your black deck would probably really like to pull up an artifact, no one really plays them because they are like so bad. I don't think Feed the Swarm's on that level. Like Feed the Swarm is, I mean, 2 mana blow up any artifact or creature, even at sorcery speed and with some life loss. That's not horrible. We even saw like earlier versions, like the 4 mana Edict a creature or enchantment black card, which I don't remember the name of, or maybe was it 3 mana? But like that's a pretty powered down version. So it does keep power creeping. And I think part of the concern is like colors still have their strengths. It seems like a lot of these color pie breaks are to shore up a color's weaknesses, but the colors still have their strength. And I think you end up in the green scenario where green is just like far and away the best color in Commander, because green's strength is I get to ramp the best and I get the best creatures. But then when you also, but that's normally traditionally was like kind of counteracted by the fact that green was pretty bad at drawing cards, pretty bad at killing creatures. But now green gets the best ramp and the best creatures, and they get to draw tons of cards and they get to kill creatures. So you end up with this like, I don't know, these like super powered colors where you still get to maximize your strengths, but you no longer have any weaknesses, which I think we see that with green, and I think we're trending that direction with white now in Commander 2, where you just end up with these super colors essentially.
But like, yeah, like, well, okay, so it doesn't outright just like outside of like, you know, Beast Within, right, and something like that. Like what's the Azuri sweeper? But like, is it a sweeper? Yeah,
the one that makes 4/4s and fights everything.
Yeah, like that is a green sweeper, right? And I don't know. I think that's fine. Like, it doesn't bother me because like it's I think it makes sense, right? Like it is a sweeper, but it functions in the way that green does work. So that's why I'm okay with that. I know that Feed the Swarm may seem boring, but that makes sense, right? Like, it does make sense. Black magic, you know, they are going to lose some health to make something go away, right? And
So if could there be a black Feed the Swarm for artifacts, then you'd be fine with it? You'd just be like, sure, well, you lost life, so that's cool.
I think it comes down to how, like, if black's only thing is, oh, you lose life, because technically black magic, you are doing something like that, right? Then, yeah, like, I wouldn't be bothersome, but I hope they do more than just, like, every card in black just makes you lose life, and that's how we get around the color pie break, right?
As an additional cost, exile a card from your graveyard.
I mean,
Done.
I'm kind of surprised, like, not prized amalgam. What's overcharged amalgam? Because I think if there was a black counter spell, I thought it'd be like that. You'd sack a creature, and then you would just essentially exploit, and then counter a spell or ability, right? So if that actually felt like that should have been in black and not in blue, which is weird for me to say, because the counter, it sounds weird, but because I mean, it works as blue. It works as blue as well. But it's just, it feels like if black were to have a counterspell, it'd have something like that. Just make them sack a creature. I think it'd have to be more than sack a creature, because it has to be like sack a creature and like maybe lose like 4 times your life or something. But as long as it stays within the realm of like, I guess, like flavor, like what black is about and what the color's about, I think I'm okay with it. So yeah, like if black had just lose life, destroy an artifact, sure, why not?
But couldn't you argue that black's not about destroying artifacts or enchantments, and that's the issue, not the, like, can you really just tack lose life onto any effect and call it black? Can you attack, like, whatever, deal damage onto any spell and it's red, even if it's your red spell's blowing up an enchantment, something that red still can't do at this point? Like, I don't know if I buy that. Like, to me, that doesn't make it. It's like the easy way out if you're designing the cards, like to throw a little bit of the color on there and then you can give any effect you want to.
But it's also the fact that, like, sure, maybe Feed the Swarm is like a bad example because it's so efficient at what it does. It's like just straight up 2 mana. It's like essentially a Doomblade for anything, right? But like the other colors have it at much, like the other colors still do it better. That's the thing. As long as black and whatever color, whatever the spell or ability is in, is never better than the home color, I guess I'm fine with it.
So mono green counter a spell is fine as long as it's not as good as a literal
Blues
counter spell. So if it's
Right.
3 mana instead of 2 mana, like, it's all cool.
What's the squirrel one? The one from Modern Horizons. It's 2 mana. It's some kind of command, and it makes squirrels, but it counters an activated ability. Right? It's like 2 mana, and super specific. Right? Like that's. I think that's fine. Right? Is that not fine? And guttural response. Sure. As much as I hate the card, yeah, sure. Why not? Right? Like, as long as it's doing whatever and still doing it worse than whatever the other color is, it isn't offensive. Like, until like green just literally has forest counterspell, I am like, I think I'm okay with it. If
But
you can,
the problem is green can have forest generic counterspell, and it's OP because green can ramp, right? The reason why we're even here today, why is green so oppressive, right? Green traditionally just has big creatures and ramp. It did not have card draw. Like, card draw is what really put it over the top. So when you combine, so what is the natural disadvantage of ramp, right? You spend all your time ramping, you cast your thingy, they kill it, and now you have nothing, right? But they gave green all his card draw. So now what you do is you spend all this time ramping, and then you rip a big card draw spell, and now you've effectively won the game, right? Because you have more cards and more mana than your opponents, and you're not punished in any way. Same with white. White used to get by on virtual card advantage. Like, when you wrath the board, you would like gain card advantage, even though it wasn't literally stuffing cards in your hand. Now you can just literally put cards in your hand, and then now that on top of all the value you get from Sun Titans and land tax and things like that, you have so much card advantage, you've like overwhelmed the other colors. So I think that's the problem. And I'll take you to 60 card formats, right? This is not just a commander thing. So blue. So traditionally, if you go back like 10 years, the best blue creature was Tarmogoyf. That was a joke, right? Tarmogoyf is a green creature. And what you would do in Legacy is you would play a Tarmogoyf, the biggest beater of all time, and then you would protect it with cheap blue spells, right? And that would be like nigh unstoppable, right? And you had to, add a different color to your deck to do this. But in Modern and in Legacy, we have Murktide Regent, right? It's like, I don't know what it is. 8 mana, 10 mana. It's something outrageous that you delve down and you get like a 2 mana 8/8 flyer. And essentially you have a 2 mana 8/8 blue creature. And what you can do is just cast it and then protect it and then, go your way to victory. That is a very green thing that they made blue by just making you have to delve away spells. And then you have this problem. Now blue is too overpowered. If you give blue cheap efficient creatures, they will just sit there and use card draw, Drago, and then counter spells, and then just lock you out of the game. So I think that's the problem. I think that's like Seth's point of, if you augment the weakness, you can just use the strength and then like just pull ahead. And then you're back into this kind of square one where like basically all colors do the same thing, and whoever has the best staples will win. I don't know. Do we need more Murktides? Like, is that
we don't need more Murktides and stuff like that, and we don't need to do that kind of stuff. But like, I don't know. This is like it's hard because there's obviously as many counter arguments as there are, arguments for the color pie breaks. And Murktide, you're right. Like, blue having that good of a creature, not great for blue, but I don't know. I still think that blue, by far and in large, has really bad creatures. Outside of Murktide Regent, so you could think of one creature, right? And maybe like Snapcaster, sure, whatever. But like on when it comes to combat and all of that, blue still has the worst creatures. So green is still doing it better.
But it's not.
What?
It's not in Modern.
Maybe not in Modern, because Modern Horizons is block constructed. Modern is a poor set to use there because, well, what about Hogak, right? Like that's a creature that's in black and green, if you want to call that. Sure, those are in 2 colors that have really good creatures. Hogak is busted. It's literally banned. So, right? Like why? I don't know. As long as the home color is still doing it better, is that a problem?
So I think, I don't know. I think there's still risk to it, and I don't want to make it sound like all color pie breaks are bad, because there's a lot of color pie breaks that I do enjoy and I think are like fun to play with. And some of them might even be like positives overall. But I think if you like keep going too far down that path, eventually you end up in a bad place. And like some of the stuff we've seen recently makes me a little nervous that we're like kind of heading in that direction pretty quickly. So I think there's like a tipping point where the color pie just stops mattering. And I think that'll be a bad thing. I don't think we've hit that tipping point yet, but I think we're like creeping towards that. I also got to ask you guys, like, so I think we all agree that a lot of these changes are because of Commander. Is it weird that the color pie is changing to meet the rule set that some random people made up 10 years ago when they decided to make this new rule that never applied to any other form of Magic and color identity be a thing? Is it weird that the entire game is changing to work around this random rule that people just made up? Shouldn't it be the other way that like, if we need our white commander or our black commander decks to kill an enchantment, maybe we should change the color identity rules to make our format work rather than having the game change to make your rule work? I don't know.
I mean, if you break this rule, you're breaking the color pie of Commander completely. I guess a few Feed the Swarms don't matter. It does matter if they overdo it. And Murktide is actually a good example, although it's not seen play in Modern. But man, does it... It is probably the best creature and the biggest one in Modern. But, I mean, if you say it like this, of course it sounds weird that they adjust the rules for this random rule set. But it is the most popular casual format after all. So I get it. I would honestly Feed the Swarm is. I would love if they stick to just black sacrificing enchantments. That was kind of flavorful because it targeted feels weird, to be honest. But I still think it's fine. I'm gonna eat my words probably in a couple of years, but so far I think it's fine.
Are we just gatekeeping? So way back, Planar Chaos. This came out at the same time as Time Spiral, I would say, where they basically, the whole block is just color shifted cards. All color pie breaks, but many of the cards that we come to love and know today and think are very integral to the color are actually from here. Krim, you brought up Damnation. So Damnation is color shifted Wrath of God in black, right? Destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated.
Card was
Before
huge.
then, black couldn't Wrath. Now... Wrathing is a black thing, right? It was like really bad.
Yeah. It's really bad. Like Seth had mentioned, Hellfire, which is like 7 mana or something like that, right? And then you lose a silly amount of life to do it. But black just didn't have a good, honest Wrath, right? Wrath meaning, what does that mean today? That stems from Wrath of God. And that was the premier thing. A 4 mana sweeper, no drawback, just destroy all things, can't be regenerated. So Damnation being the first one that black had that was just like good, clean sweeper, no stipulation, no nothing. You don't have to pay 5,000 life. You just sweep the board. And that's still one of my favorite color pie breaks to this day, right? This card is huge. It was at a point like a $60, $70 sweeper for no reason, right? But this was big. This was big. This was huge. Like, something like this was what I would, like, when you, like Seth had mentioned, when you hear color pie break, you think something bad, but this is good, right? Like, and it
became a part of black's identity, right? Now black can sweep easily.
Yeah.
Right.
Now you know black as, black's the color that can remove a lot of things, but it never had that solid of a sweeper at an efficient cost. That was, like, really white at that time, but now we have Damnation. Black sweeps all the time now. So... I don't know. Color pie breaks are good for Magic. Still. As long as you set this right, though, you'd have to toe the line. You have to be very careful how you walk this because, you don't want to just make it so the colors don't matter anymore.
So another thing people brought up when I tweeted about this that I think is interesting is, when is it the color pie being broken and when is it just evolving? Like, when do we just be like, oh, actually, like, black just kills enchantments now, and that's not that they're breaking the color pie, it's just like an evolution, and the game's been around for 30 years and like stuff needs to keep happening for the game to be fresh and new. Is that better way to look at this? Like, do you just, when you see these cards that you're like, wow, this color has never been able to do that before, that's really weird. Is it a healthier mindset to just be like, oh, it's just evolving? Or is that just letting WotC off the hook to print whatever they want to and disregard the color pie altogether?
I mean, I hope it's not the latter. I think evolving is good for the game, right? Because aside from the color, like, pie signatures, it would be pretty unfortunate if blue was locked into the only color that could draw. Right? Like that, like green had no draw, white had no draw, no other color had draw. That'd be pretty bad, right? So I think the game evolving, and much like how I like to think of it, is that, you know, you're obviously a wizard or a planeswalker, whatever the hell you want to call yourselves. But you're learning, right? You're learning, you've got all this knowledge around you. Why wouldn't you evolve as well? Right? So I think the colors evolving is fine as long as they don't evolve to where the original home color doesn't matter. So I think there are also there's a difference between that, like, you know, color pie things and like basic game functions that shouldn't be locked behind a certain color, right? Like drawing cards feels good. Drawing cards is a key part of the game to like make it so that you can play the game and get more action in the game. So I think it being locked behind one color would be bad, right? So I'm glad green got to draw cards. I'm glad white has card draw. So things like that.
All right, I have one question for y'all. So you know, like Krim said, the game has evolved, right? Theory has evolved. We have determined that drawing cards and ramping are very important to Magic the Gathering, and all colors can do this in some way, except maybe blue and ramping, right? But we have like the impulse draws, we have the impulse ramping, which would be treasures, and then we have just straight up card draw and ramping. Should all colors be able, and everyone has removal too. Everyone has removal in 2023. Should all colors be able to counterspell? Blue has monopoly on the stack. Should all colors get stack interaction?
I mean, they already do. They already do though. Yeah, like Veil of Summer is a counterspell.
Okay, Veil of Summer.
Veil of Summer is a counterspell.
It's not. No, it's literally not a counterspell.
It's a defensive spell.
How?
You can't
But
offensively
is that not
counter.
stack interaction?
It is.
Sure. Pump
But
stance.
right, like-
should we get offensive interaction?
So we're talking about like what like counterspell and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I don't know, I cast a creature and it fights a spell on the stack or something. I don't know. What the
Sure.
green
I mean,
one would be,
is that
right?
is that not just Venser and like Urtai?
Like,
Yeah.
should
why
green
not?
get Venser type effects, or should red get, I guess, Tybalt's Trickery?
Like, we've already had it.
Should
That's
white
the thing.
get more counter spells? Like, should
More
that
lapse of certainties?
be a thing? Yeah, but like more than just one. But like, you know how white has like multiple card draw spells now, right? Not just one color shifted card from like 20 years ago. Should we be getting stack interaction?
If again, as long as it's not beating blue in what it's doing best, right? So like if you're telling me that like, which is why Veil of Summer is so offensive, and I'm not just talking about because like I hate green, but and like the colors that it hates out are like primarily all my colors, but like the point is that like even in 60 card formats, right? Like why did people straight up stop playing Cryptic Command? Because Veil of Summer is 1 mana Cryptic Command. I don't know if that, okay, maybe that's a stretch and that is a direct correlation, but Veil of Summer made counterspells bad. It was the ultimate counterspell, right? Like it was, so.
Wait. If you gain life, it's not, as you say, like, gain life, so, okay, let me go back here. So Veil of Summer is kind of like gaining life against burn if you call it a counterspell, you can call life gain a counterspell against burn decks. So I mean,
would say people do.
A counter can counter the opponent's combo, which is
like if someone's comboing off, the Veil of
yeah.
Summer's doing nothing, right? But it's a protective counterspell, right? Like if someone's trying to counter your spell, you can Veil of Summer.
I would lean towards no. Like I don't think I would want all the colors to do that. I think if we do go that direction, I think they got to be actively bad. Like, I think that's the biggest difference between Krim's thinking and my thinking is like, to me, Feed the Swarm is pretty offensive. Like, sure, it's not literally better than the best removal spell in another color, the best enchantment removal of all time, but it's a pretty good card. Like, it is a very good card and it's very heavily played. I think if you're going to give other colors these effects, I want them to be like actively underpowered. Like, sure, if your green deck gets a counter spell, like, if we think that's a thing that needs to exist, okay, but it should be like 5 mana and like horribly unplayable. And if you really want to make it work, you can, but there's a cost. I think there's still got to be a cost. I think I still want your colors to be bad at things, and I don't think black is bad at killing enchantments anymore. They're good at killing enchantments. They might not be quite as good as the best color, but they are actively like good at it.
I think
they're better than they were.
Helps Crim's point. It is actually bad. Okay, it's sorcery speed, right? So it's mana efficient, but it's sorcery speed. You wouldn't play sorcery speed like enchantment removal in any other color. It is bad. It's just people in mono black are so desperate for this effect. They just jam this in their deck. So I actually think that helps Crim's point. Like, it is a bad, like, if you were playing like white or something, you wouldn't play this card at all, right? This would be ridiculous. Why would you play this sorcery speed 2 mana removal? But black needs it so badly that it's the 3rd most played card. Isn't that what that's saying?
Yeah.
It also kills a creature. Like, could you imagine?
But then if
that was a
really
green card,
that
would be the most played. That would be the most played green card, like alongside the Ram spells.
Because green also needs removal.
Because green doesn't get to kill creatures very well. So if they're like, oh, I'm really good at killing enchantments, so I get to have this card that does both. Like, wouldn't it be great?
But
I mean, Beast Within is
sorcery speed though. Sorcery speed.
Wow.
And
to
arguably,
me, it's
like
too
Beast
good.
Within is way better than Feed the Swarm. It removes anything.
I mean, Beast Within's also a color pie break. We'll get to that in a.
I got one thing though, one curveball here. We should probably mention that there's like colorless spells that say 7 mana, exile target permanent or something. Is that a color pie break, or does colorless just get to do everything as long as it's expensive? I don't know. So maybe
I think colorless gets to do basically anything. It might get to literally do anything, but it has to be super overcosted, like twice as much or 3 times as much as the like actual rate.
I'll give you the
my
best
impression.
Colorless. So the Bauble, Wayfarer's Bauble, I think, gives you anyone can ramp for 3. Boom Pile. 4
Anyone
mana,
can Wrath.
everything. Like, I'm not playing
maybe.
I'm playing this thing. Okay, fine. Navinral's Disc. You want to like slow it down here? So there are some egregious colorless cards. By the time this comes out, you would have seen the One Ring from Lord of the Rings, which is 4 mana Phyrexian Arena pseudo for colorless.
bit more.
So yeah, colorless is breaking it as well a little bit.
They're not breaking any color pie. They're not.
They're like inefficient until Wizards decides they need to sell the card. They make it too efficient, and then it's good, right?
Yeah, that's where I would be more scared of, actually. That power creep just pushes colorless cards into staples, and then it doesn't matter if there's a color pie, because, I mean, you can just play colorless in every deck. So maybe we don't need a green counterspell as long as the colorless counterspell costs 7 mana, because... at some point, we get colorless precon. There's probably going to be some spells in there. This might go wrong.
I mean, the colorless stuff should be absurdly high in cost, right? But like, because there should be a reward for specializing in certain magics.
That's the same exact thing I've been saying about color pie breaks. Like, sure, you break the color pie, but make them absurdly expensive because there should be a reward for playing a certain color of magic. Like, it's exactly the same thing.
But, like, colorless is weird, and also on top of that, colorless at the, like, if we're talking, I'm just talking on the specifics of colorless.
Yeah.
Because, like, colorless artifacts, right, we're going away from that for a reason. They stopped doing that. Because colorless artifacts are bad for the game. So, I just would be surprised to see if, like, well, not all, okay, obviously, you know what I mean by that. Not, like, every colorless artifact is bad for the game. But, like, colorless artifacts... now being bound to colors like Embercleave and stuff like that have balanced that issue. So I just don't see them, hopefully they don't just start churning out a bunch of like autos, like auto includes into a bunch of decks. But like, I don't know, some of the colors, like the weaknesses that they have, they should have something to do about them, but at a way worse rate. And that's why I think it's okay to have a green counterspell if it were 7 mana attached to a creature that I don't know, you had to, like, 3 creatures had to enter play this turn, and now you can counter a spell or something, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, sure, whatever. As long as you give it the flavor that you need to match it with the color, I think I'm okay with it, and if it never beats the original color. That's the general gist of it, and that's how I feel about color pie breaks.
Okay, all right. We need to move on, but I have a question. So if there was a green counter spell, okay, would you consider that not as good as the ultimate counter spell? Because the ultimate counter spell is free in blue, right? Like the command, like the one where you commander, force of negation, things like that, force of will, they're free, right? Or maybe arcane denial, one in colorless. So what if it's just like green counter spell? And if that's offensive, what does it need to be? What if it's green, colorless? What if it's cancel? Is that offensive? Like where is bad exactly on the scale? Because blue's counterspells are power creeping, right? They're moving up and up, right? So where do we consider the bad breakpoint for a green counterspell?
It would have to be at a weird part of the curve. Because green easily, like, our 2 mana is green's 3. So cancel's the same.
So
right?
cancel's still good.
Cancel probably, okay, well, still probably not great either. But I would say green's counterspell has to be around 4 mana.
4.
Somewhere at 4.
I would be like 7. I'm in the colorless range. Like, if you want to give colors the ability to do stuff they're not allowed to do, like, you really got to pay the price.
That's effectively not giving it to them, right? If you give like 20 mana, right? I'm just not
Basically.
casting this ever. I'm never putting it in my deck, right? It has to be good enough that someone would plausibly put it in their deck, right?
I mean, either that or you may. If you leave it at 2, it has to have this wild stipulation, like
like you get to
tap
put a
it
land
off
and
Power
put
your
it
greater.
You get to search for a
you
land
can-
and put it on the battlefield tapped.
No, I think with the green counter in specific, it should be something like counter target spell that has mana value less than a creature you control or something. Like, at least
greatest power you can.
Great.
do an
Delta's
attempt
very
at-
happy. about
Okay.
this.
Sure, I mean, that's
So, like,
fine.
almost like- I mean,
wouldn't want
honestly,
it, by
the-
the way.
I think Phil hit on something that makes sense, though. Like, I feel like fight spells, in some ways, were a color pie break. Like, green,
They
if
are,
you want to be, like, super traditional, green doesn't get to interact with creatures, but fight spells were a very green way to give green removal. Like, it played to what green does care about, which is having big creatures on the battlefield. So even though they were technically probably a color pie break in the strictest sense, I think most people like those, and it felt like a positive addition to the game. So if you did want to add a green counter spell, somehow making it like a fight spell would actually probably be a way to go. I still think I would rather just have green not get counter spells, but I do like that line of thinking.
I mean, it's funny because I actually feel like bite spells are more offensive than anything. Like,
How about if you have trample, you can burn people afterwards. How about that? But okay.
Oh yeah, ram through.
Let's talk about some of our favorite color pie breaks to see where we are. So it's funny that we complain about color pie breaks and then we're like, oh, these are our favorite cards. But here we are. And some of them may break the pie so much that you don't even recognize it. That's the kind of interesting thing that I noticed when I looked at this. So I will kick it off with Lapse of Certainty. This is one of my favorite cards. I actually play this quite a lot. 2 and a white. Counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, put it on top of its owner's library instead of into that player's graveyard. No idea what's white about this card exactly. It's just a 3 mana counter spell that goes to the top. I think it's actually really good. People don't see this coming. They can't really play around it. Yes, they can cast a spell again the next turn, but usually you just need to buy yourself 1 turn because you're protecting your win con or popping off or whatever. I think most people should play this card. This card is really good.
I think the card is good, right? And it's acceptable because at the time when that card came out, that was the gimmick, right? Like, what if white had counterspell? Or like a memory lapse or whatever. And of course, you know, even then it's 3 mana, not 2, right? So it's not as efficient as what blue would do. And it's also like, I mean, yes, you could say that it not hitting the graveyard is actually an upside in some situations, but at that time, I think it just going back on top of the library is pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal drawing that again and again. So I don't know. Like I think this is a fine card. This is a sweet card. I love it in mono white decks. I think it's a cute gacha card. I love my gacha cards. It's a sweet card.
I think going on top even like makes it less white in a lot of ways because it's kind of like your opponent's skipping a draw too, like, which is kind of weird. So, I mean, I actually like the card too, and I'm surprised it doesn't see more play. When Memory Lapse is actually like banned on Arena, it was like problematically banned in Historic, and it's the blue version but one less mana, and that card's actually like busted. Shouldn't this card be played a lot more in Commander decks? Like, why is this not considered a mono white staple?
I think it's because when you
complain
think
about white card draw instead. I think people don't realize this card exists.
Yeah, probably.
well,
People are like
it's a
Mana
mi-
Tide. I'm like, how about I give you a real counter spell instead of a meme counter spell? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Hey.
certainty, right?
I don't think it. I think the reason why it's not popular is because, like, when your color pie is built around like counter spells and able to like help you get to your end goal with counter spells, like in blue, it feels more at home there. This is like not something that I would play like this is just for the one time I'm about to pop off, use my combo, protect myself. This isn't like how blue just has a counterspell to stop you from winning the game. This is something you are using proactively, right? So if white had more counterspells, maybe then it's like willy-nilly, whatever, I'll just fire this off, right? But like because this is white's like only counterspell, not Mana Tithe, sure, maybe for some, but like this is the only hard counterspell that you can get in white. Is it good enough, right? It is as more cards are coming out in the Commander format, you have 99 cards, all of that used to seem like a lot of space, but the list is getting tighter. This is always a card that I feel like, unless you really need to protect a combo, this is like the 101st card. This is the 102nd card.
I found it weird that y'all cool with lapse certainty, but green can't get that cancel. I'm like, this is literally cancel in white. But green, no, sorry, Toski, no counter.
I mean, it's
Green doesn't need
right?
help. That's the thing. Green doesn't
Yeah.
need help. What is even with counter spells existing, is green losing? No.
Can you write it off as a tax effect? Like, is that a way you can justify this in your head? Because essentially you're just making your opponent pay for the thing again the next turn. So it's actually just like slowing them down by a turn and making them
That's
spend
a
more
reach.
mana. So is that how you
feels like they do
justify
with,
it as a
like,
white card?
The
That's
library
a reach.
manipulation is white. Like Oblation shuffles into library.
Okay.
Like maybe
Okay.
it's something to do with like messing with your library, but I don't know. This doesn't seem like a color pie break, or it doesn't seem white at all to me. But I
It's
don't
not,
know.
but it's not meant to be. It's really not meant to be, right? Like it is just legitimately put blue and white.
What about Tibalt's Trickery, since we're talking about off-color counters? Does that feel red to you because of the like chaotic
Random
aspect
chaos.
of it? Or does it feel not red to you because it's a 2-mana hard counter?
Feels red to me, honestly. I know it's weird,
It feels
but
red.
yeah, it's so
If red were
chaotic.
to have, yeah, like if red were to have a counter spell, it either has to be pure chaos or it has to be damage based, right? So like it's one of those two. As in, like you have to reach an X amount of damage dealt this turn, and this can counter something. Otherwise, it like impulse draws 1 or something. Who knows?
It feels red to me, but I also feel like the chaos thing is Wizards like the red version of Feed the Swarm. Like Wizards can be like, oh, we'll throw this chaotic aspect onto any card and make it a red card. The way they can be like, oh, we'll throw life loss on any card and make it a black card. So I feel like that's the justification, but at this point it does feel reddish, even though I feel wrong saying it.
Just add gain 2 life until lapse of certainty, and you're done. But I play this as a straight counterspell, Tibalt's Trickery. Like most of the time, you're just countering, and they just get some random stuff from their deck. Like who cares? Like once in a while,
Richard
it'll
does love
backfire.
Chaos Warp,
but-
right? Don't you love Chaos Warp?
I do. Like that's just a strict removal spell, right? Like yes, sometimes it backfires, but you know what? Sometimes you don't have the mana to cast your spell or something, right? Yeah, your spells backfire naturally sometimes anyway, right? But I don't like trickery. Like,
But
okay,
therein lies the drawback.
they can
right?
just add
So-
chaos to anything, right? And then it's like, like it doesn't matter. Like, add, like, what if I added rampant growth in red and just like shuffle your library and the first land off the top is the land you ramp into, right? Like, well, like oh, it's red
Isn't that
now,
Chaos
right?
Warp?
Like, no, it's not, right? It's still a rampant growth, right? Like,
Yeah, you would
Chaos
have
Warp.
to destroy a land first or something. And there is actually a red spell that destroys a land and gets a land, but not 2 lands. But
It's Nahiri's whatever, right?
no, there's like
Destroy
Cleansing
X lands, then
Wildfire
go
or
get
something.
X lands.
the one that you use on indestructible lands to ramp.
Oh, Cleansing Wildfire. Yeah.
All right. So, Seth,
All right,
speaking
we
of
have
Chaos Warp, what do you
most-
have for us?
We have the most popular color pie break in Commander, a card that I don't even know if most people think of as being a color pie break, even though it definitely is. And that is Beast Within, one of the literal most played cards in the entire Commander format. 3-mana instant, destroy a permanent. Its controller makes a 3/3 beast. So green is actually pretty good at destroying things. It's really good at blowing up artifacts and enchantments, creatures with flying, actually any non-creature permanent. The thing that makes Beast Within a color pie break, and also one of the best cards in the entire format, is that's a green card that just destroys a creature pretty efficiently for 3 mana at instant speed. I put this card in every single one of my decks, but if you do a Scryfall search for green and destroy creature, nothing's going to come up outside of creatures with flying. Like, they can destroy creatures with flying. That's a green thing. But other than that, like, it's just not a thing that green can do. So I think this card is actually like a super color pie break, and Wizards actually kind of corrected this when they printed Generous Gift as a white card, which is the same exact thing. Like, I think this is really much more at home as a white card, because white does get to destroy any type, I guess you could argue. So I think that this card is great, and I put it in every single deck, but it is also like very much a color pie break.
I mean, it's 100% a color pie break, but yeah, it is again probably one of the best ones, right? And one of the most well-known ones. It's a good one. I see why you'd have this on here. It's so weird to see at when that came out, to see green just straight up remove something. It was annoying. It was extremely annoying. I'll admit that.
But you make a beast. It's fine. It's a 3/3 beast. You can even use your Garruk tokens.
This is a card that I would argue not in a Planar Shift like era, right, or whatever Planar Chaos, and is better than like black removal. Like, sure, you left them with a beast, but I promise you, like at a time when there was, like, you know how hard it is to kill a planeswalker? like
Even
green had an answer.
Even the giving a beast doesn't really feel green to me. That feels very blue. Blue has kind of been the color of like transformation, pongify, like polymorphing, like I'll destroy your thing but give you something else to replace it. So everything about this card feels very ungreen to me, since it can hit creatures. If it was non-creatures, then it would be very green, but even the creature part, I feel like, doesn't, to me, that feels blue more than green.
I mean, it doesn't even feel, this feels, the adding of a beast makes it feel like it could be blue or green or whatever. That's their attempt at, like, you know, rectifying that. But like, this feels like a straight up just solid white removal, like, or an Orzhov colored removal. This is like a Vindicate, right? Like, this is at instant speed. It actually blows up a land if you wanted it to. Like, are you serious? Like, this card is
It's one of the best cards in Magic.
The most offensive color pie break, I think. Like one of the most.
To me, the only weird part about it is actually that it's killing creatures. The rest is like destroying non-land or non-creature permanents better. Is kind of a green thing. It is usually not as efficient, but there's like cards that nuke non-creature non-land permanents in green, and it doesn't feel like a color pie break. The only weird part is not even the land, but just creatures. That feels weird. The beast, sure, it's like a Pongify or something, but I think the beast, the only weird part for me is the creature destruction. I don't know why they did this. I mean, I'm not complaining. The card is good and probably necessary, but is it necessary? It's pretty good.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask, like, do you think Magic would be better if this card didn't exist?
I don't know.
It depends, like, what we're talking about. If we're talking about in the sense of, like, color pies and stuff like that and what matters to what color, this is offensive. This is way better than the original home color that I could see this in. Right? Like, this is like,
But I put it in every deck.
This card, though.
I put it in every deck. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I play it all the time. Like,
you know it. You play it all the time. But like, this is like, especially having played. Like, oh my god, it was so annoying in Standard to have to deal with like the fact that green could just blow up anything it wanted.
Well, people play
so we get super biased, and this is really just about what cards that we like. Yeah, like is this really like we like these cards and we don't like these cards?
Feed the Swarm is like no.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like at the end of the day, though, like Feed the Swarm is in the same. It's moving in the direction of what Beast Within is, but it's still not better than the home color. So this is
better,
just
right.
Well, this is instant speed.
Oh, it's not instant. Yes,
and like this hits any permanent. Like, come on. This is like.
In Vindicate, hits any permanent, but Anguished Unmaking is instant speed and doesn't hit anything.
Yeah,
not lands, I guess.
Exactly, and you lose 3 life or whatever. So,
wait, did people play Beast Within in Standard?
Yeah, sideboard. Why wouldn't you?
Oh, sideboard. Okay, that would be.
I mean, when you look back to it now, you probably could have played it in the main deck, but like, I don't know.
3/3 is a lot. 3/3 is a lot more of a threat in a 1v1 20 life format than in a 4-player 40 life format.
But I'm talking specifically just a card, including 60 card formats. I don't see why you wouldn't just run a few copies, like one Miser card, 2.
Didn't you die to the Beast before, Cram? I have definitely died to the Beast back in the day, where you'd actually Beast Within and
I've never
in the same
I've
way
never
in
casted it in Standard. I just, you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, it was cast against you. I see. It was blowing up your Jason Mind Sculptor or whatever. Yeah.
Stuff was annoying, dude. I'm just saying. But like, I don't know. It wasn't like a 4 of or anything, but it was still really good, right? Like, it was still efficient at what it did. And years down the line now, years removed, if we think that Feed the Swarm is problematic, right? Like in that situation, then this card has to be way higher above it.
Yeah.
It probably shouldn't hit creatures.
Crip. What's your card that you that's your favorite color pie break card, Crib?
So actually, okay, so when I did this, the order is actually wrong, so I'm gonna change that. Right. So my favorite color pie break, I already kind of mentioned it earlier, it's Damnation. It was Damnation. Ever since I had a sweet taste of Damnation, I wanted it all the time in every Standard. Black should have a board wipe that can 4 mana at an efficient cost deal with a board, but white always got it. So decks like Blue-Black Control would have to like go out of their way to like build their own sweeper, whether it's Black Sun Zenith or something like that, right? Like, but Damnation, it's so funny when you think about it now, because it just seems like, yeah, why wouldn't Black have that? But it is just, at that time, 2 mana Black destroy all creatures, unheard of. I have been pining for that in Standard. I don't know why Black can't have that. I mean, granted, we got Meat Hook Massacre, which eventually just was like the truth, but like that isn't a 4 mana like deal with everything. Like it didn't hit like how Damnation hit. So I think this is just one of those things where when you played with it back then, it just felt unreal. And it was just so powerful. It was exactly what you wanted. It allows you to play like control and not the typical colors. And it was a good catch-all. So yeah, maybe it's not the best sweeper anymore in the current year. Some would say this is like sweeper number 6 or 7
in Black.
But I mean, like, dude, you have a lot of sweepers
now, right?
You have a lot of sweepers.
It's not terrible.
It's not terrible.
So originally, this was a white thing, and over time, what's happened is that white was able to wrath everything, culminating in basically Farewell, but like Anduin version and things like that. And then Black has exclusively remained just destroy creatures. How would you feel if we had Feed the Damnation, where it was something like destroy all enchantments, lose life equal to the total mana value or something like that?
That'd be terrible. That's Hellfire. That's actually just Hellfire.
What if we start sweeping away enchantments and artifacts? You know, not as good as white still, but beyond just the wrath effect.
I would say if it's a Hellfire for enchantments or something like that, and it's around that cost, 6 or 7 mana, and you're losing that much life, that is significantly worse than like whatever white would do, right? Like you could die if you cast this and sweep the table.
I don't even want Feed the Swarm to exist, so I definitely don't want the Black Wrath to exist.
How do you not like? How do you not want Feed the Swarm to exist, but like Beast Within?
Yeah, are they the same, Seth?
They Beast Within is the essentially the start, right? Like that. Like I would say that is like the at the top of the hill, Beast Within.
I mean, that is fair criticism, and then maybe that's where the bias comes in. Maybe it's because I've just been playing with Beast Within forever, and it's just like normalized because it's been around for so long, and Feed the Swarm is like a newer card. So it is fair. Like I actually don't have a good comeback for that. Although I will say, Damnation doesn't really feel like a color pie break to me, just because like black is so good at. It's always been a color of destroying creatures. So for some reason,
1-for-1, yeah. Or going out of their way to like sweep, but they never had a good clean sweeper.
When it got printed, though, it didn't feel like a color pie break to me. I mean, we did have Decree of Pain already, which was double the price.
And
but
Mutilate, there's like
Mutilate
and
minus
Decree of Pain are earlier than Damnation?
Yes, Decree of Pain is Scourge.
So yeah, Scourge is Decree, and then Mutilate
this was
is
just
Torment.
like very efficient, yeah.
Right.
So those are all minus X minus. I guess Decree is not. Well, I guess
Yeah,
Decree
Decree
is
is
but
like
Decree
just a
is
lot of
ace
mana.
interesting.
See, so Black hadn't had a good clean sweeper like this, right? So Mutilate minus X oftentimes could not be enough.
At the time, wasn't Wrath of God the best Wrath? So wouldn't this be like a negative color pie break because it's giving a secondary color the strongest version of the effect?
Well, but the thing is, like, actually, like, so, like, blue-white, right, is something you would often typically associate with just pure honest control, right? But then you could get away from that. You could play blue-black.
This was the birth of Dimir and Grixis, so
Yeah,
this is
like,
the turning point.
like, why would I not want that? Are you kidding me? My favorite colors in Magic? Are you kidding me? Why would I
This
not?
is where Nicol
That's fair.
Bolas like woke up. It was like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
do it now.
I'm thriving right now. So yeah, like I don't know. I thought Damnation at the time was weird, but that was the gimmick of the set. So
All right, Phil, what card have you brought for us as your favorite color pie
so
break?
to be honest, my favorite would probably be any green card that draws immense amounts of cards. So maybe not the favorite. Also, I probably favor Mana Tithe over the cards I mentioned here, but we already had a white counter. So the color pie breaks I play, I kind of begrudgingly play. And the first one is Chaos Warp. It's a 3-mana red instant. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it on the battlefield. It's red's only answer to everything, including enchantments. And it can backfire quite brutally if you flip into a Sandworm conversion or something. But most of the time, it's not even a permanent or a land. So it's fine. Is it a color pie break? There's red cards that shuffle everything into the library and just chaotically get permanents from the deck. I think the targeted aspect of it is kind of a color pie break. You gotta play the card though, you gotta have your vegetables, you gotta have an answer for everything, so Chaos Warp, it is a color pie break. It is, the good part about it, it doesn't really make enemies because the targeted player kind of feels like they get a lottery ticket. Most of the time it's a dud, but sometimes at least they get a little kick of adrenaline for their loss. So it's a necessity in Commander. I think that's what I meant with we gotta have some cards like this. And I think with Chaos Warp, the downside is fun and sometimes bad enough that it's not as egregious as like Beast Within or Generous Gift, which isn't the break though. So yeah, Chaos Warp, pretty popular card in mono red as well. So
I mean, this one it's like the red Beast Within. Like, it does a lot of things that its color should be able to do, and it feels like it's on its color because of the chaotic aspect. But the fact that it hits enchantments is just like, that's the thing. Similar to how Beast Within, if it didn't say you could blow up a creature, it would be fine. I think Chaos Warp is the same way. Like, if they left enchantments off of it, it would be a very red card. But because it hits the thing that... Yeah, I guess creatures
Red
too.
can't kill 10/10. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I guess that. Yeah, maybe it's even worse.
Three
of
of
a
our
break.
favorite. Okay, 3 of the 5 colors have a 3 mana remove anything, add random ability from your color. Okay, what about blue and black? And like, why don't they get it? And Feed the Swarm is kind of getting there. It's 2 mana, only remove 2 types.
I
But
think it's,
would we feel bad if there was a black and blue version of Generous Gift? Chaos.
Blue
There
Orb?
is.
Blue has
blue, it's
a
called
million
Wrong Turn.
versions. Well, it's called any counter spell in existence. Blue gets to answer anything all the time
Oh,
for
that's
even
on the
less
stack.
mana.
You can do this after the fact.
Yeah, like if that's the case, every color needs a catch-all, right? Like, 'cause I mean, like if for something that hits the board, right?
Why do these
See,
3
that's the
colors get
thing, but-
grandfathered in? I don't get it. Right?
But we're getting back to what we talked about before, though, with like blue gets this huge upside that it's literally the one color that can deal with everything, but it has to have this timing restriction. If blue gets to deal with everything with counters and everything on the battlefield, isn't it just like, to me, that's strictly a negative? Then like blue is just OP.
How about Agent of Treachery, though? Sounds like it can deal with anything.
That's 7.
That's
seven.
true. I guess it does get to steal stuff, but yeah, maybe. Oh, is Agent of Treachery a color pipe break?
No.
That's my favorite.
That is on. That is
I mean,
on
Chaos Warp's
color.
just fun though.
I mean,
like it.
what if they made Control Magic, but it was any permanent for 4 mana?
Ooh,
That's kind of busted.
Oh, I mean, that would be the way to make it feel blue.
Yeah.
Like that.
And then-
if
and
you
then-
wanted
and
to
then
make
after
it, that would
1
be
year
the way
later
to
they
do
made a
it.
3 mana version. How do we feel about
I
that?
mean, honestly, that would have to be Blue's thing, right? Like, like steal it, maybe not so much like kill it or blow it up, but it would have to steal it.
Blue's got to be bad at removal though to make up for the counter spells. I think.
Well, you know what?
This is stealing. Like, so if it was like a stacks effect, stealing it doesn't help you, right? So there's the downside.
Yeah. Nah, I'm sure that'll be coming soon. That's a good way to sell a Commander Legends set.
Okay, but I'm curious, Seth. So, what is your actual opinion on Feed the Swarm now? Like, you're okay with Chaos Swarm beast with Generous Gift, but Feed the
Cards that
Swarm
have-
is still too
Nope.
egregious.
Too egregious.
How
Can't
how
do
is
it.
that card like any more egregious than like the most offensive?
We just need to add
color
1
pipe
more
break?
mana and make it target
Okay,
anything,
how
and Seth
about
will be fine
if
with
it-
it.
Yes, if it was 1 more mana and instant speed. I think it's partly because it says the word enchantment on it. When it's just like, oh, anything. At least it doesn't have the type that it's not supposed to be able to deal with, right? In black and white in front of your face. Like, enchantment.
I got 3 mana instant, okay? Target opponent sacrifices any permanent of your choosing.
Hey, okay. That feels pretty black.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
good.
Sacrifices any.
It's sacrifice. It's odd flavor, okay? You can't. It's sacrifice. It's fine.
Even if you guys are right, you're not going to convince me on Feed the Swarm. That's a hill I will die on. I will go down swinging.
All right. My next card. I love this card. I don't get to play it that often, but it's Imp's Mischief. 1 in a black, instant. It's from Planar Chaos, so you know for sure it's a color pie break. Change the target of target spell with a single target. You lose life equal to that spell's mana cost. So it effectively acts as a defensive counterspell because you can take a counterspell and make it target itself. So you can get rid of a counterspell on the stack. And then you can also just like redirect like a burn spell or, you know, any big spell at the target you can move around. I am not. This is like the black cop out thing, right? Just lose life equal to mana value, right? Like, but it's basically manipulating the stack, which black can't do and blue can do, and then you lose life. It's fun.
Something that.
It's a good gotcha. But how would I feel about Wizards printing more of
Seth,
these?
how do you
I
feel
don't know
about
about
this
that, right?
How is this different? If you are okay with this card, right? Like, it does all the things that black does, right? It has the flavor of black. It does something that blue does specifically. Just like how it's literally just Feed the Swarm if it were a counter spell.
So I personally tend to give Planar Chaos cards a free pass because of their theme. Like, yes, they're color pie breaks, but I tend to not think of them like other color pie breaks just because the whole goal of that set was to like shift things into colors they weren't supposed to be in. So if it's from Planar Chaos, yes, it's definitely a color pie break, but to me it's not egregious just because of the theme of that set.
It does have a Nicol Bolas flavor text on it. It's pretty cool.
Oh,
it is funny to see even like 20 years ago they were doing that. Oh, we'll just tack loose some life on there and it'll feel like a black card. Like they've been doing this for a long time.
Right. And also it's kind of funny that Richard's 2 favorite cards are counterspells. So this just tells me that Richard wants to be a blue mage but not in blue. So I got it.
The best counterspell is the one that no one sees coming, right? You're like, oh, it's an Orzhov player. What are they gonna do, right? Let me combo off here.
He back counterspell the Orzhov.
Is
You just gotta top
Mischief
it off with the
expensive?
Mana Tide and you're good. You win the counter war with the Mana Tide. No one will see it coming.
Is the card expensive? Like, did it get reprinted or something, or does it see
It's
a
a
lot
little
of?
Why
$25
it's expensive? Who plays it?
It's never been reprinted. I think that's
no.
the big issue. It's
Whoa,
just
it's
never been
worth-
reprinted.
I have so many of these from
Oh
Modern.
no! Send me one. I'm
This
Modern.
is
getting
video,
one
like
back.
I used to play this in Jund. You remember
God.
when Treasure Cruise Dignitai was legal?
Tech.
No. It was Ancestral Recall. Oh no, Ancestral Vision.
Oh,
When
Ancestral
they unbanned
Vision.
Ancestral
Oh.
Vision. That was when I started playing
Yeah.
this.
Oh, and you're
main deck.
again.
It was just
Richard
this is beautiful.
playing blue. You know what that is, right, Richard? You're just playing Grixis. That's what you're doing. You're not playing.
I refuse. I refuse.
You're
to play
literally
Grixis.
just playing Grixis. That's what you're doing, dude.
I refuse. How do you cast Tarmogoyf in Grixis?
All right, I got one that I think is going to be controversial. I'm very curious to hear thoughts on this. It's kind of 2 cards in one, and these are red spells that are actually black spells, or maybe white spells. Blasphemous Act, and also Unholy Heat, because that kind of gets my point across. Blasphemous Act, another super popular commander card, the most heavily played red sweeper in the format. It is a lot of mana, 9 mana, and you deal 13 damage to everything. It does get cheaper, though, based on the number of creatures on the battlefield, so it's often 1 mana, 13 damage to everything, 2 mana, 13 damage to everything. So dealing damage is very red. That's kind of red's whole gimmick. On the other hand, being able to deal with big creatures efficiently is not red. Red gets the upside in their removal that it can usually hit your opponent's face as well. They get this extra power that black doesn't get, white doesn't get. They get to throw their lightning bolts at their opponent's face. The downside of this is they have struggled to deal with big creatures. Blasphemous Act, I think, is a color pie break because it just deals too much damage for too little mana. Even though it says damage on there, this is really just Wrath of God in red. Like, it kills 99% of creatures, so it's really just Wrath of God. Unholy Heat is another version of this that I dislike even more, although it's not as heavily played in Commander, so I didn't want to have it be my main card. But dealing 6 damage for 1 mana, it's actually just Fatal Push. It's actually just murder, except for 1 mana in red. Like, these are not red cards. So, what do you think about this? I actually, a while ago, I asked this question on Twitter. Like, if there was a hypothetical card that was 1 mana, deal 100 damage to a creature, is that in red's color pie? A surprising amount of people said yes. I think a majority of people said yes. A lot of people think if it says damage, it's red, because red deals damage. But if you really think about it, if it deals too much damage for too little cost, so it just actually kills anything, then it's not really red, right? It's actually like a black card hiding behind the word damage to make it feel red, similar to black having, lose some life tacked onto it to make it feel like a black card. So I think Blasphemous Act is a good card. I put it on my red decks, but I also think it actually breaks the color pie.
I think it's totally in the color pie.
Yeah, same.
What?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, like it deals damage, right? So like, yeah, the fact that it says damage, that matters. But like, this also is me hoping that colors have an answer for some of their weaknesses as well, right? Because like, just like in 60 card example, I just come to grips with the fact that if a creature ever gets over 4 toughness, I'm never killing it, right? Like it's like, okay, it lives. But that's why cards like Blasphemous Act are good, right? I think it's good that red has access to a sweeper, even if it doesn't say destroy all creatures, Which, by the way, sometimes 13 damage isn't enough. Just saying. Just saying. There are situations where I've seen that not be enough, and it's not as uncommon as you'd think. Because, like, prior to that, it's like, what, chain reaction? That was what you had? So, for your sweeper. So,
or you pay X for earthquake style effects or whatever.
Right.
Like, red can deal a lot of damage. It just costs a lot of mana. I will give Wizards a little bit of a pass because in 1v1 formats, 9 mana is kind of a lot, and you're not as likely to be casting this for 1 mana when there's only 2 people playing creatures. So I don't know if they intentionally did this. I think the Commander format kind of made this more egregious. Unholy Heat, though, I think they did intentionally, and to me, that one is also super egregious.
Unholy Heat is obviously amazing in 1v1, right? Like, that is, like, an unbelievably good... It's essentially 1 mana blow up a planeswalker or creature. Right, whatever you want.
So that's not red.
That's
not a red effect.
But
that's
it is.
That's
but
the problem.
But it is red. It's a very, very efficient card. But for the way they designed it, it feels red.
So what if it don't?
I'm with Seth. Blasphemous Act is wrong. Like, look at that, and the next best red sweeper. Like, it's not even close. I don't even know I don't know what other red sweeper you would play.
I think
like,
it's Chandra's, whatever, the outburst one where you target a creature and then it deals.
like 13 is a lot. And yes, sometimes there's something you will kill, but just like sometimes there's an indestructible creature that your sweeper won't hit. Like, you still cast a sweeper, it just didn't work, right? Like 13 is like basically kill everything except minus a handful of things. I give Wizards the pass because they probably didn't design it for Commander, but
also doesn't get around protection.
Yeah,
Just
that's
like
corner
it's not prevent like
cases.
wanderer effects and
That's
things
not
like
a-
that,
that's not
or
a
you hit a
corner
stuffy
case.
doll or something your opponent has. Like, yes, there's some fail cases, but
I don't think that's a corner case.
But aren't those also fails cases for like White Wrath? Like if your opponent has an indestructible creature, your damnation didn't work. Does that mean it's not
first
a
off,
wrath?
I mean, I guess it's still a wrath, but like, White gets the job done, and we know that. Farewell.
I guess farewell. Yeah,
Right,
that
exile,
does
but,
pretty
like,
get rid of it.
The fact that it is damage, it feels red, and it has all the drawbacks that you would want it to, right? Like for a red card.
what's the drawback?
The drawback is that 13 damage legitimately sometimes just doesn't do it because now you're not only folding to protection, you're folding to indestructible, you're folding to just obviously there are creatures that can get bigger than 13, but that's unlikely. So, but no, actually, no, it's not unlikely. It's kind of possible.
That's
but yeah.
pretty unlikely.
Okay, maybe. But like, I don't know, like because there are also creatures that can't be dealt damage, right? There's a lot more things where it doesn't feel like Blasphemous Act is better, or like, maybe mana cost wise is better than Wrath of God or Damnation, but like I don't feel like it's better than those cards because those will kill
is it
you.
Not? Would you play Wrath of God before you play Blasphemous Act?
I mean, assuming that I'm in the colors, I think I still like the knowing that Wrath of God kills everything.
Would you have it?
Yeah.
you would actually have it in your deck?
Yeah, I would, like, if I had to choose, obviously, Blasphemous Act is good at what it does because of the cost, right? But when I want a destroy effect, I would rather go for a Wrath of God.
I think Blasphemous Act's better than Wrath of God. If I was in a Boros deck, Right, but that isn't cost part of the card? Like, isn't that part of the power level and everything we've been talking about?
But Wrath of God being able to just hard sweep and clean the board at 4 mana, assuming, like,
But
like
99% of the time, they're effectively the same. Except
They're doing
one
the
costs
same
1
thing,
mana,
yeah.
one costs 4, right?
Maybe you're right. Maybe, like, that's true then. Like, maybe but, like, I only like Blasphemous Act because it costs 1 mana. Right?
Yeah,
in a multiplayer
I mean,
format, that's the only reason why I like it.
Wait, so
I will say, like, oh, go ahead, Phil.
the reason you think it's a color pie break is because it costs 1? Which color should be able to rasp
So
for
13 is so high that it's effectively destroy a creature.
Sure, but
It's effectively
you didn't
Wrath of
mention-
God, but
Destroys
red.
all
Yeah.
Yeah, but Star of Extinction does 20 to everything, and that's not a color pie break, I assume.
I was actually
Well,
going to
is-
bring that up. Like, the cost plays into it too. Like, red traditionally, it can deal with big creatures. It just has to spend a lot of mana. Like, you can Earthquake for 20 mana and kill everything, or you could Earthquake for 14 mana and get a Blasphemous Act out of it. That's pretty red to me. Like, you got to pay a lot of mana to kill big things. So I think for Blasphemous Act, the problem is, like, the combination of high damage and low cost. Like Star of Extinction, I think that one I don't find egregious because it's 7 mana, so you are paying a lot of mana to actually deal that amount of damage. Although I could see an argument for that being like borderline, at least. But that one to me is much less egregious.
The hordes.
But I don't know. I think, what about the hypothetical red card? Like, 1 red mana, deal 100 damage to something. Is that red because it says damage, or is that a black card because it kills anything? I think that's actually like essentially the heart of the disagreement or like the debate over the color pie.
I think
that is not red.
I see why it would be a color pie break in that, because like it is just so cheap for just what is an arbitrary number that it is gonna kill it, right? It's gonna kill whatever
it kills.
It's targeting.
Right, it kills anything.
So,
I mean, and again, not to say this card's bad, because I think Blasphemous Act is very powerful, but I do think it's, and I played it in all my decks, but I also think it's a color pie break.
Okay, one hypothetical. If a card would say Scry 100, would it be black because it's a vampiric tutor, or would it be blue because it scries?
Ooh. So I would say that would actually be a black card. Here was another. Okay, you want a good one? How about a blue? How about this? Is this card blue? 4 mana, double blue and colorless. Put a creature on top of your opponent's library, and your opponent mills 2 cards. Those are all super blue effects. But when you add them all together, you essentially just built a black card.
Sure.
I mean, yeah.
Isn't that
is a color
one?
pie.
Yeah.
That is just, but like, because they're 2 blue abilities, it doesn't bother me.
But that means there's no color pie, because I can construct any effect you want by combining enough like random effects from the color that you want, right? And if the only thing left is color pie means the efficiency at which you can do it at, right? So like if that effect that Seth described was 1 mana, that's like Fatal Push or something. That's like insane, right? But you make it like 4 mana, you're like, okay, it's kind of mediocre because it's 4 mana removal. So maybe color pie is just efficiency. I think that's what Krim was hinting at earlier. You can do anything you want, but if you do it most efficiently and it's not your color, it's wrong. And I would actually say Blasphemous Act is violating that. Like if you choose Wraths that only remove creatures, it is the most efficient one and the best one, right? The other way you look at it is if you look at Ondu Inversion, 3 mana destroy everything. This is like a worse version of that. It's like 1 mana, only deal 13 damage to creatures, right? So I don't know, right? It depends how you want to frame it, but I would rank this above any hard creature Wrath. Like I would put this above Toxic Deluge. I would put it above Wrath of God. And not to say those other cards don't have some use case where they're superior to this, right? But just in general, this is 1 mana, remove all creatures, and it works like 99% of the time. So that is probably a color pie break because red shouldn't do that.
I'll admit
it
that,
should like Mega
by
Chaos
that
Warp or something, right?
Right. I mean, I you know what? You're right. I do think then in that case, like, because going off my like original point, it is better than what the other colors are doing. If the simple goal is just to blow up the creatures and whatnot, like it's always in a multiplayer format, it's often coming down at 1 mana, right? So, and even 2 mana. if you have to pay a lot for your Blasphemous Act, 2 mana, you're already doing better than any of the other Wraths. So sure, that is true by that sense. So yeah, you know what? I would say it is a color pie break.
All right, Krim, what do you got for us?
So I bounced between Feed the Swarm and Resculpt effects. So like Raven form and things like that. You don't really often see blue exile outside of that 1-2 mana spell. What is it called again? From
what does Resculpt do?
Reality Shift. So Resculpt is just 2 mana, and you can target a creature or artifact, exile it, and it becomes a 4/4 elemental token. That's it. And so
why is this blue? So like we say Pongify is blue? Is that what we're saying?
Well,
like you can remove things, but you need to leave a body?
That is the idea behind like what Pongify is. Although Pongify only hits creatures, thankfully, as opposed to like something weird like if it hit anything, then I would have a problem. But I think this card is pretty cool. I like this card as well, and effects like it. I think I like Resculpt a lot more than Ravenform because instant speed, obviously. But yeah, like this card, not something you would normally get in blue. Just straight up target, exile. You don't even get a manifest. You just get a 4/4 blue and red elemental token. I actually would argue that this is just better than whatever that Fate Reforged spell is that you've told me, and I've forgotten in the last 10 seconds. So, like that, this card is and is just the truth, right? And when it comes to mono blue, why would you not run this? It gives you a hard answer and an exile to an artifact. Is this problematic to you, Seth?
Yes, this is the blue feed the blue feed the swarm essentially.
Okay,
I think the artifact part is what does it. Like I can see the justification of like Pongify, Reality Shift, Transformation. Blue can deal with a thing, but it transforms. But since it also hits artifacts, and I believe in all of Magic, unless I'm missing something, it's only Ravenform and Resculpt that can targetedly deal with an artifact in blue.
That isn't just a straight up bounce.
That isn't bouncing it or maybe gaining control of it in some situations, like Agent of Treachery effects or whatever. So just straight up exiling it. These are the only cards that do it. So if they just said creature, I would be okay with it on the Pongify justification. But since they also are the only cards that hit artifacts, to me it's very similar to Feed the Swarm, just doing something that color's not supposed to do.
Reshape or tinker your own artifacts in blue. You can transform and transmute them. So why
exactly.
If it could only target your own artifacts, then that would be fine.
But
if it was artifact you control.
Not point at your stuff, but then point to your opponent's stuff.
Like, yeah, why couldn't you easily just shift the magic to your opponent's stuff in blue, if it already is?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Isn't the exiling a creature the egregious part? Like, can white?
I mean, I think
exile creatures?
Yeah,
Reality Shift.
Yeah. Reality Shift. Reality Shift could, and then you manifest something. That would be...
Yeah.
And then there's like Pongify doesn't exile. I guess maybe exiling in general is problematic. Maybe it would be better if it was a destroy effect rather than exile.
But then...
At least Resculpt leaves behind a 4/4. Like, you're paying a bit of a... I think that is a bit of a price, at least. A little bit.
Ferocious
There's a cost.
turned on.
Yeah.
That's the drawback. No, like, legitimately, I think this is just... If this hit any permanent, that'd be super busted. See, they obviously balanced this. This is no Beast Within. But it is a color pie break. But let me ask you this. Is that bad? Like, do you think it's bad that this can target an artifact and exile it?
Yes, I think so.
I think
Why?
this is
I don't think
it sucks. This card is not good.
What?
I'm not happy
I've
with
never
this.
seen it played.
Right?
Which artifact?
So you think it's like
I
powered
think it's
down
bad
enough?
when it becomes Beast Within, and you're like, I gotta put this in like every card in like every deck ever made, including 5-color decks, because it's better than whatever the heck the original color was, right? But
So you think it's powered down enough that it's
I don't
it's
even
okay?
want to play this in blue.
I can see
I'm
that.
I guess
You
if
gotta
you're like
play this
really
in mono
hosed by
blue.
some artifacts, right? Like there's some sideboard meta against you that you need to get rid of artifacts. You might put this in, right? But it's like
I have now trimmed Pongify, and I just play this. If I'm in a mono blue deck, I would play
I wouldn't
Resculpt.
play Pongify either.
but like blue needs something like this, right? So like the reason why I ask is it a bad thing that they can do this is because I think there are just certain elements of the game that every color should on some level in some weird way interact with it.
So my argument is
one of them.
My argument is blue already can do that with counters, though. Like, blue
and
can
bounce.
deal with literally any type.
Bounce. Bounce is the more blue way to do it, right? You bounce it back, and then you counter it afterwards.
So I can bounce Portal to Phyrexia again.
Oh, please.
I never-
Don't count
Again,
it, though.
right?
I never feel bad for blue because you have counter spell. Like, anytime blue comes
This
up
is
with
why
the color
blue
pie
sucks, though,
arguments,
right?
I'm just
blue gets no tools because you're like, they have counterspell, but you literally need to have 2 mana open at least or whatever while the spell is coming down, meaning you can never play anything.
In a 4-player game.
And you don't know if it's coming at you or not, right? Like, just because someone casts a 10/10 doesn't mean you need to counter it. You only need to deal with it if it attacks you, right? And blue actually gets no tools because everyone's like, they can counter it. It's fine.
Yeah. It's just keep this in mind for those that hate blue. Again, blue's mana is not infinite, and counter spells do run out. And
This might wrap all the way back around to the beginning of our cast when we were talking about if Commander is having an impact on these color pie breaks. Because I think in 1v1, it is true that blue just can answer anything with counter spells, but maybe in Commander it's different. Like maybe in Commander you need something like Resculpt because you can't actually just leave up your mana and counter everything that you need to like you can in a 1v1 format.
I mean, there's no
I don't
doubting
like it.
it. There's no
Get off my
doubting it.
lawn. Get off my lawn, you kids and your blue artifact destruction.
This is just worse Beast Within. Why are you so offended by it?
Because
Yeah.
blue's not supposed to hit artifacts, Richard. That's just how it is. That's how it's always been.
Get with the times. Get with the times.
I like all these cards are just Beast Within, but like much worse. And Seth is so offended by them.
But I love Beast Within.
I mean, green can use it. Green can use a little bit of help there.
Yeah, green needs the help.
Yeah, green is the one color that probably doesn't.
All right, Phil, what do you have for us?
Unless it comes to Wraths. And, this is actually... sorry. So this is actually the only 2-colored card on this list, and I just added it because Mana Tithe. I mean, Richard already talked about a white counter. So let's talk about stuff green can't do and stuff blue can't do. And that's wiping the board. And the only card that kinda does it, besides Isuri's Predation, which is a little bit expensive, Oversimplify. 5 mana sorcery, exile all creatures. Each player creates a 0/0 green-blue fractal token and puts a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the total power of creatures they controlled. They were exiled this way. So everything gets exiled, and then everybody gets a big or small, whatever, how big their creatures were, fractal token. I don't like that I have to play this card, but I have to play it because it's the only reasonable Wrath. Maybe Curse of the Swine is another one for blue. But, I mean, this card is, by the definitions we had in this podcast, it's a color pie break. And I play it in Lonis, and I just gotta have a Wrath. It's not, you can get, if the table hates you for it, they can even beat you up for it, but yeah, I don't know. Unless we count in Aweless Dust,
I think color pie
play
break only
Wrath.
happens when the card is good. That's my conclusion.
It's not good enough
This
to
card
be a
is so
color
bad.
pie
I'm
break.
like, does it matter?
It did save me in pretty much every situation I cast it in, so it just does the job. That's what I mean. I would
Yeah.
love to play a good Wrath, but I'm playing Simic.
I don't know
so-
what is green about this. So this is blue,
Yeah,
the
where
body.
you're
Yeah,
like
that is true.
It's
yeah.
the body.
transmuting everything into one body or something like Curse of the Spine, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to
Yeah,
talk
what
about
is the green part?
The
the,
plus one
the
plus one
giant
counters.
body, 1/1 counter.
I
The
guess
wolf
you
art.
could get a big creature out of it. The wolf.
Well, I
And
mean,
it
like,
synergizes with blue because you can bounce the token or something, right? And then it's like actual removal, or you can proliferate your tokens, or I don't know, right? So it feels a little
2-card
bluey.
combo Wrath.
But
I mean, it does feel like blue. Curse of the Swine in blue, like transforming, like turning something into something else. That's pretty blue. I don't really see the green part in it at all, though.
what if you transform into a 0/0 Seth? Is that okay? With no token, with no counters, just 0/0.
Oh my god.
if it just, well, no, that
It
obviously.
effectively kills it, but it just
Yes,
transforms
exactly.
into a
No.
germ token. It's the Pyrexia invasion. You become a germ or something.
No, that would not. Is Curse of the Swine a color pie break then?
Yeah, isn't that an egregious color pie
I
break?
mean, what about
It
what about
is,
a
I
recent
think
one?
so.
The phasing of Zhalfir. Is that a color pie break?
Same, probably. Same line as Curse of Swine. So I think like I could have chosen Curse of the Swine, but I don't play this. So I play Oversimplify. And I think the color pie break is enhanced due to the fact that it's green as well. So it's kind of a double whammy break.
yeah.
I know it's not a good card. I hate that I have to play it. But I also don't want Wizards to print a better Simic Wrath because I'm...
Why would you
the
play this
next
over
to-
Boom
Because I
not
already
everyone has
flip
your
enough
coin
points
flip
in
luck,
other decks.
Richard.
I don't.
Yeah.
I can't do
What
this.
about Ugin? What about Aweless Dust? Like,
Ugin
that's
is on
the
my
problem
no-no
with these,
list.
like really bad Wraths, right? You can just play the
Honest
colorless
Dust,
ones.
yeah. Honest Dust is actually a good point. And Let me know in the comments if anybody has experience with Izuri's Predation, because I've seen it once in Commander Clash and it was fine.
No, that's like the opposite of Blasphemous Act. Like 4/4 is not enough to like kill things.
Yeah.
Right?
I am not sure about it. But yeah, Allistas would be fine. It destroys some of my cool enchantments and stuff, but my clues would be there still. So
keep your clues.
Yeah.
I'm glad Phil put this card on here because I actually think this is very interesting. Is this the kind of color pie break we want then? Like if the TLDR of this whole conversation is color pie breaks are okay, but they need to be worse versions of that effect, if that's what we're landing on, is this like what we want out of a Simic Wrath? If we're like every color combination needs to have a way to deal with the board, this is a pretty bad version of it. Is this like one of the thumbs up, like well done color pie breaks?
Yes.
For me it is, yeah.
I think 100%, right? Like, it doesn't do it better than the original. It's not like Blasphemous Act where it costs 1 mana. It is appropriately costed. It's still around the price of, like, what a sweeper is in white or black. But, you know, obviously the effect is definitely
bad.
not nearly as good.
Yeah.
But it is what Simic has. So
Here's the problem, because you're going to power creep the original cards. So you're going to have like a direct to commander Wrath of God that's like 2 mana. Like just a straight up, not a Blasphemous Act, but like a Wrath of God for like 2 mana. Or maybe like a Farewell type one for like 2 mana. And then your next Oversimplify can be 4 mana. It's a lot worse than the 2 mana Wrath. And then now you're sitting at like a 4 mana Wrath in Simic. Right? So I think like that's the problem. I think that's where Feed the Swarm comes in, right? Like, oh, we have Fatal Push and stuff. Like, yeah, it's fine, right? And then now at 2 mana, it's a little too efficient, even though it's a lot worse than, you know, any real removal. So I'd be afraid of that, because would you be fine with Oversupply at 4 mana or 3 mana? It leaves a giant body. It's not as good as a Wrath, right? And then our premier Wraths cost 1, 2, and 3. I guess 1 and 3 mana, right? Blasphemous Act, Toxic Deluge, Hour of Revelation, things like that. So like a 4 mana Wrath is still pretty bad, right?
I don't know. My favorite Wrath is 8 mana, but okay.
Yeah, Phil loves drawing those cards. I mean, I think this is a hard card to evaluate. I've never played with it. I feel like the tokens have got to be a big drawback, but I think it's a good point that color pie breaks are not immune to power creep. But I wonder if that's like a whole nother issue of power creep. Like maybe the issue isn't that they printed a 4 mana Simic Wrath. It's that they printed the 2 mana white Wrath that led to that Simic Wrath. Like maybe that's the core issue there, is the actual power creep instead of the color pie break getting slightly better. Interesting.
Right. So
what are people supposed to take away from this conversation? What is your final point? I'm very curious. Like,
you only complain about new cards. If you started playing Magic with any of these cards, you're fine with them. But the minute a new card comes, we're infuriated. That's my gut reaction. Right? I'm like, Damnation is fine, Generous Gift is fine. But like, oh no, Resculpt, that looks sketchy.
Kids these days, I'm telling you, and their resculpts. I mean, I think the bias does play into it a lot. Yeah. I mean, my biggest takeaway is we actually like a lot of the most egregious color pie breaks. Like when we came into this, we were talking about, like color pie breaks, are they good or bad? Well, maybe that doesn't even matter because we're putting them in their decks and we enjoy playing with them. So maybe whether they're good or bad is not even relevant to this conversation, because if we actually felt that strongly about them, I guess we probably wouldn't be playing them, and we are. So
I mean, maybe it's because we're being like forced into playing it, but like every time we've played with these these color pie breaks, the game feels a little bit better, doesn't it? Like
every time I cast Feed the Swarm, I got to go take a shower after the game ends.
Oh, get out of here, Seth! you taking a shower because it's a victory shower. You're feeling good, right? Like you're feeling good. You're like, you thought you had me with your nonsensical enchantment,
but like, rest in peace in my Reanimator deck. Now I'm living it.
Yeah, come on, that's a victory lap shower. It feels good. Like, every time you've casted Beast Within, doesn't it feel great? How many times has Beast Within been like, I love that card?
I do love that.
So there you go. Love the that is a color pie break working. Like, my general opinion is, again, color pie breaks are fine if it is things that the game needs. Like, if a color needs to interact with something, let that happen. I don't care how they spin it as long as it's somewhat flavorful, but like, yeah. Beast Within. Sure. Feed the Swarm because black couldn't deal with enchantments. These all make sense to me. So, and they all feel flavorful. As long as it's not just outright, like, 2 mana, I blow up an enchantment in black. I'm like, at least make it feel a little more like life lossy or something, right? So, color break is fine. It's good for the game. The game is evolving. The colors should evolve too, because also, like any sentient thing, like, and especially if you're a wizard planeswalker, you evolve with it, right? You evolve as well. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's overall positive, as long as, again, it's just not outright disrespectful, like, to the home color, right? So yes, okay, Blasphemous Act, pretty damn good for what it is. Probably a color pie break. Beast Within, pretty damn good. I would say a huge color pie break, but we all accept that. So,
all right, tune in next week when we define what it means to be respectful to the home color. we will have an interview with Mr. Red and Mr. White and Mrs. Black and Mrs. Blue. See what happens here. But okay, so that is our talk. So I guess. For the listeners, what are your favorite color pie breaks? Do you even consider some of these cards color pie breaks? And if you think color pie breaks are good, is it a break or is it an evolution? I think that's kind of the crux of it, right? It's not really a break, it's an evolution. And as we mentioned, the evolution becomes part of the history, right? So Damnation was a color pie break, and now it's considered to be part of Black. So, yeah. So thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you all next week. See ya.